our highly respected, ever vibrant, dogged, corrosive Bishop Kukah, don't come and come talk, say, a thoroughly dysfunctional society, state, nation like Nigeria need reform. So Kukah is supporting the tax reform bill. Technically, he is insisting that is long overdue, hence the bill should be supported.
Thank you very much. Good morning.
Good morning, Bishop. For a lot of people, they've missed having you on interviews, seeing you. And maybe we could talk about what you've been up to. I know nation building clearly, but then there's a big controversy in the nation today. The tax reform bills, for example. Again, it's splitting the country across the regional lines, north versus south, religious lines and all of that. And this is an issue you've had to deal with time and again. Even at the Kukah Center, at the heart of the work you do is cohesion, ensuring there's, more working together amongst Nigerians. So when you see issues like this, Bishop, what comes to mind?
Well, Nigeria is it's a highly energetic country with people that are so eminently gifted and roaring to go. And I think the greatest problem in Nigeria has been the inability of the state to create enough strong guardrails to contain the energy, the vision, the competing narratives of our country. And it is this lack of what I call effective guardrails. This is why the conversations often spill over and they lead to violence and so on. But I hear you when you speak about all the issues you've identified. I'm really excited about the tax reform bill because the first reason is that I know nothing about it. But I've started trying to educate myself. Any form of reform at all, it's important to get this thoroughly dysfunctional country working again. So I am excited because hopefully that we can take the time to listen to this conversation about how to avoid and to end this financial recklessness and this irony of Nigerians living by the seaside and washing their faces with saliva. Nigerians living in a country that is so richly endowed and yet being spectators to the rascality and irresponsibility of the elite who continue to mismanage our resources. So I'm hopeful that this is the beginning of a very long journey towards fiscal management and efficiency that can lead to the growth and development of the kind of country that we envision.
Good morning, Bishop. Let's touch on religion and governance now, which is, something that the Peace Committee, of which you are one of the founding fathers, is organizing. And to be specific, the discourse provides a platform for religious leaders to discuss the role of religion in strengthening and sustaining democratic governance in Nigeria. Now, while this appears to be lofty, some would say that, some would express skepticism because those who have adorned the religious garb in the past and have participated in governance have not particularly covered themselves in glory. They have not strengthened the institutions that they left behind. They've not helped to transform Nigeria's economy in a discernible way. So why should Nigerians be excited about this endeavor?
Well, thank you. The first point to make is that I'm a Catholic priest. Okay, I don't have a ministry of my own, as the powerful pastors say. I do not have a congregation that I can abandon and go and join a political party and contest election, lose elections, and come back and continue again. So I am on a Catholic road that is pretty clear with its own discipline and so on. So I don't fall into that conversation that you're talking about. Therefore, if you want, you can look for those pastors who have abandoned their terrains and gone into politics. They will be in a much better position to tell you how well they have functioned or malfunctioned. That's so. But to come back to the issue, let me clarify something that Kayode said. when he talks about traditional rulers and religious leaders, Nigerians have always tended to mistakenly conflate these two identities. Traditional rulers are not religious leaders, perhaps in the traditional sense of where we came from, where you had what you might call the divine right of kings and so on, where traditional rulers combine both the spiritual and the political. But since the emergence of the modern nation state that pushed feudalism right to the backburners in order to establish a democratic state, the roles of traditional or religious leaders have subsided substantially. And I think part of the problem we have in Nigeria is that a traditional ruler is appointed by the government, okay, after some kind of a process. But at the end of the day, the validation is done by the governor of any given state. In my case, as the bishop of the Diocese of Sokoto, if the governor is not happy with me or the president of Nigeria is not happy with me, all they can do is take me to court. They can't fire me because they had nothing to do with my appointment. Traditional rulers have been fired and can be fired and will be fired if they fall foul of the political ideology of the day, not because they have done anything wrong, but if they fall foul of what the governor wants, they'll be sent packing. So you are dealing with two completely different rules. But Nigerians have tended to conflate them. However, to make the point, it's important that these institutions that have stood the test of time and are eminently held by very respected people, that we harmonize the values that they bring to the table for the building of a democratic and a just and a fair and equitable society. How we do this depends on the nature of the state itself and its operators. And maybe we can talk about it a little bit more, because I think the contamination of these institutions by politics has largely brought the disrespect and the opprobrium, and the cynical way that people see, people in religion and people in traditional institutions.
Bishop, we will use you, and good morning as well, Bishop. We'll use you as a benefit of our hindsight, and the credentials you have speaks to that effect, because we've seen you at different fora, bringing one level of intervention or the other. And if you were to speak to the Nigerian state and what is going on right now, because one of the conversations we want to have is to the effect that people like you being able to guide the younger generation into the future that we hope all of us will have for a better country. But going back to talking about you as our benefit of hindsight, given the experience you've had and your contribution to nation building, when you look at the Bola Tinubu's administration, what will be your immediate assessment? I know you made some remarks in the past recently, but what will be your immediate assessment as to say, these are the things that I think is going right, these are the things I think can be modified, or these are the things that should be jettisoned?
Well, I mean, that is the subject for a PhD thesis. And I think all I can say very briefly is that, first of all, this government must respond urgently to the issues of the day. And from wherever you are, the issues of the day are issues of massive impoverishment of Nigerians, the incredible hardships that Nigerians are going through. You can see the frustration on the faces of people. You can see the frustration on the faces of families, husbands, wives, children. Now, the cumulative impact on this, on the society itself, are immense. Now, I am convinced that this government has some lofty ideas, and it could probably, and I'm hopeful it will do great things for our country. But I think there is a total absence of a coherent and a cohesive and a constructive strategy of engagement. And I'm talking here about engaging the citizens of Nigeria. This government very urgently needs a communication strategy and a deployment of certain kind of metaphors. And those metaphors relate to the visible presence of the president, of the vice president, in different segments of the Nigerian society. Because what we need now is something to convince Nigerians that there is light at the end of the tunnel. And that light, because not every light at the end of the tunnel, it could be the light of a running train. So, but that there is this light at the end of the tunnel, and all we need to do is to be a little bit patient, because better days are coming. I think that conversation has not been effectively and efficiently crafted yet. But I see from such massive developments like the local government, the Supreme Court judgment on local government autonomy. I see the conversations around the tax reform bill, again, as I said, about which I know almost next to nothing. But I think that we are nudging our country and our people to a slightly different direction. But how we get there and how we retain our people's attention, that is something that this government needs to pay urgent attention to. The business of people who are communicating for government is not to abuse, is not to take issues, is not to just make announcements. There needs to be a constructive way of engaging government. So when people call themselves government spokesmen or whatever, it's not about telling Nigerians. It is also about engaging Nigerians. It's not about thinking that your business is to hold the fort and make sure that nobody dares to have any view that is contrary to the view of government. So we need to understand that people are governing on our behalf. And like they say in Hausa, you can't borrow my mouth to eat onions. Governance can only be effective if there is a channel of communication, and the government has the right antenna to hear how the weakest segments or the weakest link in the chain, it's surviving. And this, I think, is one of the major things that is missing. But we need to have an idea. Now, we're hearing little stories here and there. We are happy to hear about the return of the refinery in, is it Port Harcourt? It's very great news. But I think the government needs to segment a lot of this to let people understand that perhaps by Christmas or by next year or by the middle of next year, these are the kind of things that we should expect. If we have an idea of that, then it will help us to bear the cross, believing that sometime, down the road there is redemption. I find that missing in this government.
But speaking of the policies of the government and, the approach to communication, Bishop, how in touch with reality would you say that the presidency is with the challenges of Nigerians? And this is, coming off of the back of the recent statement attributed to Mr. President about how the economy inherited from 2023 was a facade, and, post-subsidy now, or prior to this subsidy regime, Nigerians have been living a fake life. So would you say that there is a disconnect between, the presidency and the economic challenges the Nigerians are facing?
Well, you don't go, if you finally get married and your wife suddenly realizes that the house you claim you had, you didn't really have it, or the car you claim you have, you didn't have it, or the money you claim you have, you didn't have it, there will be problems. But I think by now, Nigerians are a bit sick and tired of hearing these stories of, we didn't imagine that things would be as bad as they are. It also speaks to the issues about the level of attentiveness and the level of mental discipline and the level of the commitment of people who govern to create scenarios. Because if I were to want to be president of Nigeria tomorrow, I would first of all realize that, look, over the years, I should have an idea. Governments after governments, a month to the exit of government, there is, of course, everybody will know, a massive bazaar, a massive effort to move resources away, a looting spree. And that looting spree probably continues right up to the end of government. So you would know that if somebody posted that we have $30 billion in our foreign reserves, it is most likely, and you should be sensitive enough to know that By the time you really take over, there will be no $30 billion. We should be familiar with these conversations. But guess what? Look, people come to power not to make excuses, but to fix our problems. And I think this is where, and I don't want us to move away from the reason why I'm here, to talk about the events that we have planned today, because the Kukah Center is a policy center, and part of the things that I'm attracted by is policy intervention, so that government can understand it doesn't always have all the answers, and that also government appointees tend to lose their voices or collapse their voices into ideologies or the ideological commitment of government. And people often lose track, largely because, again, you assemble people in government, you have square pegs in round holes, and so on. So it's always a problem of assembling a team and the capacity of government to deliver. So I think what we are doing at the Kukah Center, and what we've been trying to do for the last 10 years or so, is to support and encourage government, but also to support and encourage ordinary Nigerians to have faith in democracy. But we also want to use this opportunity to let government know they must not take the loyalty of our people for granted. And that winning election does not necessarily suspend your responsibility to ordinary citizens by way of contact and engagement, and then to wait for the next election. So our intervention is also a source of encouragement. And that's why we're bringing together not only scholars to discuss this whole question of what really is the role of religion in a society such as ours.
Bishop, it's difficult to have someone of your caliber not dragging into issues of states. As you said, that's what the Kukah Center is really all about. But another leg of the conversation has to do with young people. And we would like your intervention because they are the successor generation. Some of them are already holding the fort within the spaces they operate at the moment. But what we found out is that a lot of people have faith in God, whatever deity they subscribe to. But faith in country is very, very low. As a bishop, as somebody who is passionate about Nigeria, and you're speaking to young people, how do you help them to have faith in our country?
I think the first mistake to make is to think that young people need your help. I spoke, I think, about a week or so ago at an event, which, of course, the media took only one aspect of what I said, distorted it, and went away with it. But one of the things I said, I was speaking to a gathering at the graduation of a school by my friend, Senator Ndoma Egba. And towards the end of my lecture, I encouraged young people to develop a culture of rebellion. And I don't mean rebellion in terms of we don't want this, we don't want that, but a rebellion against the paved pathways laid by their parents. There are too many politicians, too many people in government and out of government who have stolen this country blind, and they mistakenly stole the country for the sake of their children. Guess what? It has turned out that most of the money they have stolen is going to lie waste somewhere, and it will be eaten by maggots, or it will be stolen, or it will be kept by their crooks and criminals in Europe who will take away the money after they are dead. But guess what? What the young people require now is just the mental space, the space to operate. Okay? What the young people are looking for, I'm sorry to say, the whole idea of not too young to run bill is a commendable idea. But I don't think many young people now are interested in a life in politics in terms of I want to be minister, I want to be governor. Young people just want to be given the space. So, for example, if you focus on railways, if you focus on electricity, if you focus on getting this country working at the level of, it's not just about the deployment of jobs, it is about creating the necessary environment. Young people are dreaming dreams, and they just want a Nigerian space that can contain their dreams and their imagination. Right now, their dreams are circumscribed by a tyrannical elite that simply sees itself incestuously as business. My business is to steal, to protect myself and protect my children and protect my family and those around me. But guess what? The surprise here is that we are going to see in the next 10 or so years a country that will not be able to respond to the contradictions of nepotism, patrimony and the kind of system that we are running. Because if this country opens up, young people are going to be able to, they are already making millions, billions of naira on their own without anybody bothering about who your father is. So I think rather than thinking about what we can do for young people, it is actually to ask young people what do they want. And if you ask the average young person, now what do you want? How can I help you? And all the young man will tell you is, please get off my space.
It's a big day for the Kukah Center National Peace Commission and its partners. You have the high-level discourse on religion and democracy. And a lot of people will say, well, it's about time, right? As I said earlier on, religion offers us a very strong institution that we can leverage on for nation building, for democracy. But quickly, we always define democracy as government of the people, by the people, for the people. We define democracy, but then we never really ask what kind of people are we talking about here. So perhaps you can speak to what you hope to achieve for the people who are mentioned 3 times and democracy once in the definition of democracy.
Well, let's suspend Abraham Lincoln's definition of democracy in Gettysburg and know that this is Nigeria, where the standards don't apply. Another form of government is called plutocracy. Plutocracy is government, which is actually perhaps what fits the government of Nigeria. That we are practicing a plutocracy, not a democracy. Because who are the people that matter in Nigeria? They are the people with the means. And a plutocracy is government by rich people for rich people. So then, of course, you have another system of government that is called theocracy, which is that it's a government by divine anointing. Only those who the state, the religion, the state and heaven are basically the same realm. Then you have a system of government that focuses on patriarchy or whatever. So there are all kinds of systems. We do not yet have the institutional capacity to live and align ourselves with the principles of democracy, where you're talking about one man, one person, one vote. Well, guess what? We are living in a society where the big man's mentality suggests very clearly that a driver and his oga cannot have. Mentally, yes. And this is what you have seen now in the capacity of people with money to compromise the wishes of the people. So we are still a far cry away from the ideals of democracy being a government of the people, for the people, and by the people. Ours is a pretty dysfunctional environment where most of the rules don't apply, where lawlessness and people making up their own rules as they go along is the norm of the day. And this is why religion has found itself in a toxic mix. Now, I repeat, Nigeria, the state is a dysfunctional state. It doesn't have the capacity to protect its citizens. It has not shown enough capacity to provide for its citizens. It has not shown enough capacity to prove that citizens come first. This is why you now find the importation of the divine into the political. I'm a priest and a bishop, and you may probably feel scandalized when I tell you, look, if it comes to voting for the president of Nigeria, I don't want a president who fears God, because there is no way of measuring fearing God. I want a president or a governor who fears the Nigerian voter. Unless and until we get to that point, the fear of God will continue to be imported largely as a fraudulent excuse, for stealing elections, as a fraudulent excuse for governing badly, as a fraudulent excuse for not delivering, because somehow we've come to a point in which now, rather than Nigerians focusing on holding the feet of their leaders to account, they say, well, we live and for God, because somehow God will do it for us. In a democracy, God holds the universe in the palm of his hand, but human institutions are managed by human beings. And as I said, for us, what we're trying to do in this conference today is to show what good religion can be. But right now, because of the nature of the Nigerian political environment, we're finding that religion is being conscripted into politics, with consequences both for the ordinary citizens of Nigeria and with consequences for the integrity of religion itself.
Ooh. Really strong words there, Bishop, because you find out that these same politicians are some of the most religious people, having Thanksgiving every other week in, religious centers and all. But I think it's instructive, some of the words you've said, and we look forward to the discourse later today. We have to thank you once again for your interventions. We've been speaking with Bishop Matthew Kukah, Catholic Archbishop of Sokoto Diocese, founder at the Kukah Center. It's always a pleasure and an honor to speak with you, Bishop. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Please, just slight point of correction. I'm just the ordinary bishop of Sokoto, not an archbishop.
Kukah also lamented the comatose state of Nigeria's economy, adding that something urgent needs to be done to cushion the effect of the economic hardship on the larger Nigerian masses to enable us have a substantive oxygen that will keep Nigerians alive on the long run. Kukah is a man who tells truth to power at all times. Every opportunity when Bishop Kukah gets, they use and he talk sense into our leadership head. You understand? So that they go to do things rightly. This bishop now bishop when get level when we say they largely respected by all political leaders because you know they raise your face, he go tell you the truth as it be, as they look your face, he go tell you the truth as it be. You don't go bitter, you don't get anything when you go do it. So they insist say with the current economic situation where Nigeria needs drastic reform when it go reshape our nation, when it go reshape the country, when it go reshape how we do things so that things go in the proper direction when it's supposed to go.